Iran and Israel are back at war, and it stems largely from the threat of nuclear warfare. But while there is back and forth over how real the nuclear threat is, the discussion around Iran's nuclear ambitions are once again dominating global discussions. Let's speak now to nuclear engineer Hugo Kruger, who has been following the Iranian nuclear discussion closely. Hugo, you're a journalist, you're a historian, but also I believe you're an author, and you'd have written books about this particular story. Talk to us about the brief background of this attitude towards nuclear weapons on the side of Iran, but also on the side of Israel. What informs their attitudes?
Just to correct you, I'm a civil nuclear engineer. I didn't write a book on it, but I've done several interviews on the topic and written several blogs on it. So I have the academic background. And in addition to this, my wife's from Iran. So I know the country quite well, and I even speak a little bit of Persian. Iran's nuclear weapon program does not really exist, and I'm going to have to explain it because it's an extraordinary statement. The history of it goes back to the Iran-Iraq War and was very well researched by a historian by the name of Gareth Porter. During the Iran-Iraq War, Iran was subjected to chemical and biological weapons, notably when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran on behalf of the United States of America. And they're the largest population since the First World War to have suffered chemical warfare on a mass scale. And when the Ayatollah Khomeini came to power in 1979, he passed a fatwa against chemical and nuclear weapons. And that was actually the end of the Iranian weapons program that was started by the United States in the 1950s when the Shah was their puppet government. In fact, Esfahan, which you pointed out today, when you go there, you see a big hole in the mountain. That was where the Americans assisted the Shah to try and create nuclear weapons as a counter to the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So what has been bombed there is nothing new. There's a lot of misleading information currently being said. That fatwa that I just mentioned is still upheld by the current Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. And that remains the official policy of the Iranian government. Which is they have a policy which is similar to South Africa's policy, which is nuclear ambiguity. South Africa, for example, dismantled our nuclear weapons. We de-enriched the uranium, but we still have radioactive material. And the United States, and we still have the right to enrichment. The United States does not recognize that right, which is why there is diplomatic fallout over Kuber. Yeah. Iran's policy is very similar. Iran has centrifuges. They have a right to enrichment. That is a right that is enshrined in the Charter of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran has fully complied with IAEA inspections to the extent that the Director General of the IAEA said yesterday there's no evidence that Iran has a nuclear weapon. It's impossible to have a nuclear weapon with inspections if you fully comply. Yeah. Okay. So why the threat, you would say? Why the exaggerated claim? Nobody thinks South Africa is a nuclear weapon state, right? South Africa can theoretically make a weapon. It'll take, as the head of Nexa said to me, it'll take anything from 2 weeks to 1 year if there's intent. But there's no intent on our government to do so. So why the threat? Well, the reality is Israel has 200 nuclear weapons, and Benjamin Netanyahu is linked to the Iranian smuggling mafia. Okay, which the FBI even has papers out on. And this is what Dr. Noam Chomsky told me on this issue when I interviewed him. If it becomes fact, and it is almost fact, that Israel has nuclear weapons, this is to say if the American officials acknowledge it, then under existing American law, all military aid to Israel must be suspended. It's called the Symington-Glenn Amendments. Okay, so Israel is creating the threat of Iran and the threat of their nuclear weapons to obfuscate the fact that they have almost 200 nuclear weapons, many of them pointing at Iran.
So is this a security threat? Is this a political threat?
So a very excellent question. The threat of Iran started under Ehud Barak, and he wanted to win the marginal vote in the Israeli polity, because Israel has their own extremists, as we've discovered with the genocide of the Palestinians, for example. And Ehud Barak thought it was good tactics to create the fear of Iran to win these votes. And of course, Netanyahu has been exploiting this. Netanyahu has been saying Iran has a nuclear weapon for the last 20 to 30 years. And it's a political tactic to stay in power in Israel. And also remember, Netanyahu has prison sentences out for him. And one thing that came up in his court case is the fact that he was smuggling with uranium. He's involved with uranium smuggling. So to not want to go to jail, he wants to create a war. I mean, that's literally how cynical I believe that man is. I mean, if you can commit genocide, you will do that. So, then you have to say, but what is all of this in Iran about? And what I believe it is the same weapons of mass destruction story that brought America to war on Iraq that is being resold to us. In fact, that same story was leaked to German intelligence through dissident Iranian groups that were funded by the Israelis. Okay, so Israel wants to create a threat of Iran, start a war, and eventually drag the United States into it to do its dirty work for it, to dominate the region.
Yeah.
This is what this is about.
So if your argument is true that there is no weapons of mass destruction, it's against their system just generally, is against their belief, they would not manufacture such a thing, why don't they just come out with that and say, well, there is no such, come inspect this Isfahan facility, there is no such, and therefore stop this attack?
They have. The IAEA has inspected, and every time they go out clean. They come with their tails between their legs. There's nothing to do. Iran has asked to stop the inspection to say this is getting ridiculous, guys. In fact, a part of the JCPO agreement was the fact that Iran would reduce its uranium enrichment facilities over long term. Okay, this was what they wanted. There was it's supposed to be another such agreement a week or two ago, and then Israel disrupted this with these attacks.
Yeah.
So Iran has respected all of its international commitments, but who hasn't respected it? Israel and the United States of America.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So somebody would be listening to us and be shocked, and you say, well, how they'll ask the question, how is it that the global world is going then, therefore, with this narrative? You're saying the IAEA has inspected, they have not found such. Why is the global world going, at least America, going with this narrative that Iran is pursuing nuclear weapons?
It's not just the IAEA, it's the CIA and the Mossad's official position. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard a few months ago in Congress said there's no evidence that Iran has resumed the nuclear weapons program that they cancelled in 2003. This is the director of national intelligence of the CIA. So Donald Trump is ignoring his own military intelligence. I mean, who has better information than the CIA? Nobody. This is an outright lie that is being perpetuated to start another war. And what I would say, just the last point on this, the solution to this is expand the Treaty of Pelendaba to the Middle East. Call for inspections on Israel and Iran and get rid of military weapons in the Middle East. This position is the official position of Iran. They want a denuclearized Middle East. It's the official position of all Arab states, including Egypt, which is not in the Middle East, but in North Africa. Israel is opposing it. And I'm asking for the international community and for our ministers and foreign ministers to start asking for inspections on Israeli nuclear weapons. Yeah. Notably, it's the Mona nuclear site, and notably, it must release Mordechai Manuchu, who is under house arrest for revealing the Israeli nuclear weapons secrets to the world. That is the solution. No nuclear weapons in the Middle East. We can't let one country have it and the other cannot have it.
United States is using its muscle, I suppose, diplomatic effort to muscle in its allies, particularly your France, your Germany, and the likes too, so that they can continue to use this argument. What do they stand to benefit, and why are they on board with this?
Well, there's oil in the Middle East. Never forget that. There's oil. And this is the one thing I would think it is. The other thing is domination of the region. And also you have during the Iraq War, General Wesley Clark said that there were 7 countries that were going to attack. He was the supreme commander of NATO. And out of the 7 countries, 6 have been destroyed and invaded. There is still a belief in America, a latent belief of the new conservative movement, who believe they can bring democracy to Iran and Iraq through military force. Now, it didn't work 6 out of 7 times in all those countries, whether it's Libya, whether it's Somalia, whether it's Iraq. Why would it work in Iran? It's not going to work. And it's going to create a bloodbath because of the way, and I mean, we don't have time for this, but the way the Iranian military is structured like the Swiss army. Every man does military conscription. Iranians are enormously nationalistic. They've got a 6,000-year-old civilization. They will fight until every last man, woman, and child. Okay, even if it means their own destruction. So we're waiting for one. We are creating the scenario for a major bloodbath. And what I'm saying is that our diplomats must now step up and prevent what is going on and hope that the United States is not dragged into the war. I don't believe the Israelis and the Iranians have the capability, I mean, I'm not a military expert, to destroy each other. They're just going to trade blows. Yeah. Fine. But if the United States joins with ground invasions, it will be the end of the Iranian government. And then you sit with the same problem we had when Saddam Hussein was dead. What do you do afterwards? There is no plan. Okay. That is the problem we have at the moment. And that is what I believe we must all speak out against and say there is a solution. It's called the Middle East Nuclear Weapons Free Treaty. It was proposed by the Shah of Iran. It's the official position of the Iranian government, and it's in line with South Africa's foreign policy. Get rid of all nuclear weapons.
What is the possibility of an actual war breaking out?
Very likely at the moment. My family-in-law's in Isfahan. They're frightened. We spoke to them today. They cut off the internet every now and then. They're frightened. And they say, we hope Iran wins. That is what the people I know inside of Iran says. They are prepared for war. I was in Iran 6 months after Donald Trump assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the general, when he came into power the first time. I'd never forget this. Iran is much like South Africa, where they have street traders and hawkers everywhere. Everybody had a small symbol of the fallen general, and they stood behind the government, ready to fight. You're seeing mass protests in Iran calling for war with Israel and the United States. This is what is happening at the moment, and we need to prevent this. And the only way to prevent this is to get the diplomats to start raising their voice and the generals to calm down. But I don't see any mature leadership in the United States, because you have Donald Trump that is actively ignoring the intelligence of the CIA. I mean, this is insanity. So we are on a war path, and we need to stop it.
Hugo Kruger, appreciate your time. Let's leave it there. Nuclear engineer, Hugo Kruger, who is following the Iranian nuclear discussion closely. He's married to an Iranian, I believe so. And of course, he's giving us his view and perspective there.